Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, Marvin. How are you?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble, but I would add now I'm trying to stay cool as well.
Yeah, it's been it's actually cooled down early this week, and we're getting back up there again. But over the week before Father's Day, it was scorching over here. We had water temperatures flying up, and it's actually been kind of interesting the last couple of days. You know, over the weekend, temperatures were dropping. You know, we had some. I woke up a couple of mornings and saw temperatures in the high 40s and 50s, and so things have been a little bit slow in the morning a couple of days this week.
Yeah, and of course you're talking about the smallmouth bite, but on the trout front, that was probably, I fished on Monday because it was those couple of cool days down here as well, and I think that's going to be kind of it for, I guess, what we would say responsible trout fishing for a while.
Yeah, we might bump back down, but I actually just put out an article on the DWR Notes from the Field fishing blog a couple of days ago about kind of responsible summer fishing, trout fishing, things to consider, water temperatures, etc. And I mentioned in there that, typically in Southwest Virginia, we don't see those high 60s, close to 70-degree water temperatures until typically the end of July, first of August. And we had them last week. We were seeing fishing real good in the morning, and then by 3 p.m, we'd be seeing 67, 68 degrees, and the fish would get sleepy and slow down. And it just because, there's not a whole lot of volume in the creeks right now. Everything's pretty low, and it's been hot, but it's been cooling back down. So we may get, in the mountains down here, some good temperatures for the next month or so. But yeah, this is definitely a time of year if you're going to be trout fishing to carry a thermometer, because it's not great for the trout to fish when it's that warm. 67, 8 degrees and up, but it's also generally not that great at fishing either. So it's worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and we talked about before we started recording. So in those situations, you can fish really early, or you can fish really late. You can fish after it rains, but then also too, we were talking about like watching the nighttime lows, right? And as you were mentioning, like really great when you see them like down in the 50s and the 40s, because that water's cooling off all night long. But like what we're having here, kind of in the Piedmont of North Carolina, we're seeing nightly lows in the upper 60s, which is not good for trout fishing.
Yeah, probably not. And but yeah, so if you're going to trout fish now, it's going to be first couple hours of the day, and then go find a spring creek or a tailwater or something. In Southwest Virginia, we've got a handful of spring creeks that stay cold all summer, and then we've got South Folsom Watauga tailwaters not far away either. So those are always options, but and again, we will get cooler temps, and the mountain streams will be running cooler, but just keep an eye on it and know your options and know the limits too.
Yeah, but the good news is when it warms up, we were talking the last time we recorded, we were waiting for the cicadas, and they're here.
Yeah, I've probably been hearing them for 2 weeks or so now. And, of course, we got all the other smallmouth food sources. Been seeing Dobson flies, which means the Helgamites are on the move. Those are big bugs that I'm sure they eat from time to time. We've got plenty of dragonflies and blue damsels out, and topwater fishing's been great. And but talking the springtime a lot about how certainly pre-spawn smallmouth are kind of they're driven to feed, right? Because instinctually they have to pack on some calories and prepare to spawn, and then potentially not eat for a while. So the weather is worth considering, but they tend to be, activity wise, a little bit more resilient in the face of fluctuating weather, because their instinct is just pushing them to eat all the time. Come summertime, and once all that spawning activity is behind them, they tend to react a little bit more to fluctuations in water temperature and weather and that kind of thing because they've just got several solid months to lay around and eat. So like this week, we were seeing low, relatively low water temperatures in the morning because it's been so cool. And then the fishing would be fairly slow until like 11 noon, and then it would start to ramp up, and we'd have good fishing from noon to the end of the day. So, but we're starting to level out again. We're up in the 80s pretty much every day, and overnight lows are like you said in the 60s. So things are getting back to average at this point.
Yeah, and so I would imagine, right, the fish are probably pretty well spread out at this point, right?
Yeah, they're definitely pretty spread out. I haven't seen a fish, hanging around a nest or anything for quite a while. And if you're finding a lot of fish sitting in current or very close to current, that's a pretty good indication that spawning activity has been abandoned.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, it hasn't been hot enough long enough to really push them up into the riffles either, right?
Yeah, no, we are pushing, 80 degrees in water temperature and some days, but it hasn't quite gotten that super low yet. Usually what pushes them up into the riffles is, very low water and real hot water. So you have low dissolved oxygen content. So they'll pack up into the upper ends of runs and pools. Just because, and I have a feeling a lot of that has to do with the fact that their food is moving up there too. The bait fish and dissolved oxygen just doesn't spread out in a river system when the water's really low and not moving a whole lot like it does when it's the river's full and moving pretty well. So that's typically a peak summer kind of pattern. Like again, like when the trout fishing tends to get slow and warm, end of July, 1st of August, is kind of when I would wait to see that.
Yeah, got it. And I would imagine too, in addition to your topwater bite, I would imagine your bait fish bite's pretty good too, right?
Yeah, it's that's always good. But frankly, I haven't been doing a whole lot of streamer fishing because the topwater fishing is good, and most people, myself included, don't want to throw a streamer when you can throw a topwater fly. So, but we've been seeing plenty of chases and plenty of minnows hanging out of fish's mouths and stuff like that. There's certainly a lot of bait in the river, and the smallmouth fry, the young of the year, are being preyed on as well because all those males have pretty much abandoned posts and don't care about their offspring anymore.
Every man for himself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And on your topwater stuff, because I always have this conversation, like when I'm talking to Ethan and we talk about kind of that traditional kind of still presentation for cicadas and bugs versus that kind of animated popper for like frogs and minnows. Are you fishing topwater both ways, or are you kind of shifting more to that kind of summer bug pattern?
Both ways. Yeah, for sure. In real low water, sometimes those real aggressive presentations just don't get them to go as well. You can also do, and we do every day, a fair amount of sight fishing when the water's real low, because especially when we have this kind of seasonable, sun, warm weather, clear water, you can see fish, and your chances of putting a big fish in the boat go up exponentially if you can see a fish before they see you and put a good cast out there. So we're fishing, kind of passively with bugs a lot. But I also tend to, if we're running through a shoal or pocket water or something like that, I typically abandon bugs in that kind of water because they just don't have the presence in real broken water that they do in flat water. And on top of that, if a fish is in pocket water or any kind of moving water, they're generally not in a passive mood. They're generally in a pretty positive mood, and you can get sort of more aggressive reaction type takes by fishing something a little more aggressively. So, that day to day, that's how I tend to break those things.
Very neat. And, folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. You can email them to us. You can DM us on social media. You can drop them in the comments to our social media posts, whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some Articulate Fly swag. Then you're a drawing for some really awesome stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And, Matt, like I always do, I know your free days are getting smaller and smaller. You want to let folks know where they can find you and what you have available and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. The website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and all my contact information is on there. We have probably another dozen to 15 days left of the summer to book, mostly September, mostly August to September. But if you want to get out and do some good topwater fishing, that's the place to be. So give me a shout and we'll get you on the water.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, listen, folks, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Thanks, Marvin.